Hello, in this video I'd like to talk about setting up users and user management within ProconWeb Visualization software. This is the software. As you can see, I'm on version 6.60, but the principle is the same on older versions. So the first question may be, why do I need users and user groups? It's very much like using a PC. So you may have an administrator that has overall access to your system, your HMI panel, and then you may have a maintenance engineer that can get into certain areas to set up certain parts of the project, and you may have a supervisor that can go in and set up parameters that the normal operator would not need to touch. So some of the benefits of having users and user roles is you can restrict who has access to certain pages, you can restrict who has access to certain entry fields, you can also change the language of the project. So for example, if most of your operators are English, that's fine, but then you have a German operator, you can log in as the German user and all of the project text will be converted to German. And also, if you wish, you can change the units of measure. Another feature you can make use of is alarms. So when you have alarms on the system or alerts, you may need to monitor who acknowledges the alert. So that is also tracked. So it gives you some traceability. So first stage is to create a new project. So new project. I'm going to call it users to keep it simple. I'm using a HMI SCADA project, which basically means the project will be held on a PC and the project will be streamed to a browser on that PC or another PC on the same network. Okay, to create project, takes a minute or so. Okay, so project history is now called users.pwd. You can see up here as well. Okay, so the first stage is to go into the project tree, go into user management, roles and rights. So by default you have an administrator group and you have what rights, tasks do they have access to. So if I click in there, expand that, this is what access they have by default. Change passwords, modify users, etc. So it's a lot to do with controlling the administration of users. So that's administrator. I'll leave that person alone, that group alone. I'll create a new group and I'll call it supervisor, and I'll create a third group called maintenance. Okay, so I want those two different groups to have access to different things. So for simplicity, I'm going to go down here and create a new rights group. So I'm going to call that supervisor, and I'm going to right click and create a right. So the right is, I'll just call it supervisor access, keep it simple, and then I'm going to create another new rights group and I'm going to call it maintenance, him a right, and it'll be maintenance access. Okay, so you've got your two default groups. I've created one called supervisor with the right to supervise access. So now I need to associate those rights with the groups. So click in here, so I'm in supervisor, I'll add supervisor. Expand, important, you expand it and you say, okay, you're assigned, you have access. And then the maintenance group, assign him to maintenance, and he has maintenance access assigned. And we have the different access rights and we have the different users. So the next stage is to create a picture or page. So I'm going to go into the start picture, the default picture you always get, and I'm going to start adding some buttons. So click on a button. In the class, like the template, I want access to special function. We okay, let's just check what groups we have access to. So we have access to display, to input, and function on released. That's good. Okay. Drag that into position, click into it. Now we're in the instance, we want to define it as special function login user, which it actually already was, 203. And we also want to give it some text. So the top text will be login. Okay, and right copy Control C, Control V a couple of times. And then we want a log out button. So again, in the new instance, log out. And special function this time is 205, log out user. Okay. And then we also want to be able to call admin. So click in here. And call that call admin. Okay. And then we go special function call user administration 206. Okay, so we have 3 buttons. Now it would be nice to actually have a table view showing the different users. What we need to do is go into the users, and we need to create some more users. So we've got a default user, admin, and he's part of the group administrators, so we need to set a password. So for simplicity, I use the same as the username, admin, and I put $1 at the end. And you notice that that's never visible, it's always hidden, so it's up to you to remember what you've entered. And I can create another user, and I'll call him Soup, as in supervisor. Soup there. Okay, and now he's part of group supervisors. Okay, and then I'll have another group. I'll just call him main. Okay, and then I need to set up passwords for each one. So again, I'll call it SUP, $1. And this one, MAIN, $1. Okay, and also you're part of the maintenance group. Okay, that. Okay, so we have the basic features set up. So what we can do now is go to our start panel. So what I can do, for example, is create a entry field. So if I go to picture editing, numeric field, numeric digit, I'm going to access the internal default numeric variable. Okay. I want to enable input so I can actually edit it. And this is where I have the ability to assign rights. So I can click in here and pick Supervise Access. And I can pick multiple if I want, so I can actually have 2 different groups having access to that entry field. But in this instance, I'm just going to allow Supervise Access. Okay. Okay. And I'm going to move that down here. And I'll just double click in there and add a tooltip, only modified by supervisor. It would be a good idea to add a display field showing the current user. So if I go to here, have a dynamic text, and then in here I pick which variable I want to use. I want to use system tag. What I can do, you can see there's lots of system tags, but I'm looking for user, so I can go in here and apply a filter. Type in user, and there you go, current user full name. Select that. Okay. Okay. Now would be a good idea to now include a label to show the current user, so we can clearly see that the login and logout buttons are actually working correctly. Constant text, let's just put current user. Okay, so that's just static text. Move that over to here. Dynamic text. Change the variable, and we want a system tag now. So if I disable the filtering, you'll see that there are several, over 60 system tags that are of string type. If I just type in user in the filter, it takes me straight to current user's full name. So I click on that, OK, OK, and drag that next to current user. So we now have an entry field that only the supervisor should be able to modify. And we can display the current user and we can log in and out. So let's try that. So go to project environment, update project. We have to disconnect and reconnect, override, start streaming. Okay, so if I switched back to browser, do a refresh. Okay, so nobody's logged in at the moment. Current user, nothing shown. Unable to access that field, and the tooltip's telling me only modified by supervisor. So if I log in now and log in as supervisor, SUP $1, okay, there you go, current user, supervisor. Now click in there, I can edit the value. If I log out, current user's disappeared, I can no longer edit. Let's log in as somebody else. Let's log in as admin. Okay, so we're now logged in as admin. I haven't got access. Log out, log in as the other user, which was maintenance, main $1. Logged in as main. I can't edit either. And if I want to, I can log in as admin. I can call admin because I'm only one with access to this. And I can change, add details. You notice obviously this is going to be German because the default language of ProconWeb is German, so that's why these system messages are in German, so we can change that later. But I've got the ability to change the name, add telephone numbers, add email addresses, etc. Be a good idea to go back to the project now and add some more detail. So if I go back to ProconWeb, then I can add some other features. So if I want to change the language, I go to Common Tools, the default language is selected, and the other option is German. So if I edit language and add English, and it's probably useful to remember these are international dialing codes, hopefully they're familiar, but they're the way to change the language. So I'm going to add English, and then in here I'm going to add some text first, constant text, language. Okay. Drop that down. So we need to add a dynamic string, dynamic text, and we want to pick system tag, and if I put the filter on lang, current language. Okay. And I need to make it an input, function on release. Sorry, I don't need function on release, input. Okay. And if I drag that over to here, you'll see what happens. Project environment, update, disconnect, reconnect. refresh. If you remember the dialing code, so 049 is German. So if I go call admin, all of this system information is in German. Close that down, click in here and pick English 044, call admin there. That's more user friendly, isn't it? So that is in English. So if I now log in as admin, tells me I'm logged in as admin. I'll pick the language as English. Call admin. Okay, so I can now highlight somebody and say edit. So I have the ability, being administrator, to change somebody's password and to change their language. So let's change him to English. And let's change myself to English. And let's change supervisor all to English, because they were all defaulting to the single language at the time of creation, which was German. So that is all working. So now what we can do is add a button that will allow you access to a page. So back in the build time view, we're now going to create a second page. So I'm going to give this a name for a start. So we'll just call this page 1. And then I'm going to create a second page. New picture. Using the same class as the previous page, so it will be the same size. Okay. This will be page 2. So what I'm going to do now is create a simple button on here, give you page access back to page 1. So we drop it down and we label it in the instance, not in the class, page 1. Okay, and then we go down to here, and back in the class we should define it as picture, change picture, and then here we pick start picture. Okay, so when you press that button it will take you back to the start picture. Okay, so I can be lazy here and I can copy that, Control C, Control V, and I'm going to call that now going to page 2, but I want to assign rights, and the rights will be maintenance this time, so only the maintenance engineer can access that button. Okay, so just to recap, we've added 2 buttons to take you between 2 pages, and that page 2 button should only work when I'm logged in as maintenance. Okay, so we go to update project, disconnect, connect. Okay, so notice that button is greyed out. So if I now log in as maintenance, M-A-I-N, $1, okay, the button is now accessible. There, page 2. And page 1 is not restricted. Page 1 takes me back. So hopefully that's been useful to you. You can see how we can create different user groups, different users, restrict access to a page and restrict access to an entry field. So hopefully that's given you a good start to understanding that feature. Thank you.